tonight. And so really what I wanted to talk about is there's two stories. The first one, as I'd mentioned, started back in 2015 when the council tasked staff with putting together a strategic planning session just for the council members to really map out the future of the community and the city. And at that time, the council came up with 5 themed or focused areas that they really wanted to dig into with the community, and that included identity, safety, parks, planning, and growth. And I mentioned those 5 areas because those were the 5 really core conversations that we held when we had the first community conversation back in the winter of 2016. And the 3 sessions allowed our residents to not only come up with new ideas, but to pitch projects, initiatives, and different things that really became valuable feedback for staff as we took those 5 core ideas and we boiled them down into the 4 core pillars that built the original strategic plan. Those were the community identity and connections, the safe, well-designed, beautiful places, economic vitality, and a high-performing organization. So along with the 4 main goals, it also allowed us to develop some strategies underneath each of those goals that we were looking to accomplish in the next few years, as well as some very specific action steps moving forward. What we discovered in 2018 was that a lot of the action steps we had set out for staff we were able to accomplish. There was a voter-approved bond election that many of the projects that voters had asked for and talked about in that first series of community conversations, we were able to deliver, and projects that came directly from those conversations. So we held another round of community conversations, and this time it was just a single evening here at Centerview, and we asked residents specifically the question of, what is it that makes Raymore home to you? What is it that connects you with the community itself, but also what is it that you've envisioned the future of this community being as you continue to make it your home? Overall, what we found interesting was that the 4 goals remained, but the underlying strategies and action steps were really the only thing that was updated to reflect the completion of past successful projects and efforts that had already been undertaken. So one of the terms that Mr. Fearborn reminded me of this week that I think I have always enjoyed is the idea that sometimes when we create a strategic plan or when we create a master plan, sometimes those plans can become what's called shelf art. In the past, we have created these plans that even with the best of intentions can end up on someone's shelf and they end up never being opened again. And so what we are looking to do now as we move forward is to take some of those previous plans that we have used, and we have the more technical plans like the watershed management plan, the growth management plan, parks master plan, or even the transportation master plan. And we want to find a way that we can truly make them fit within the strategic plan that we have been using and putting before residents since 2015. Previously, we'd come to the council with a slightly updated and modified version of the strategic plan, and that is what you have on the screen before you here. What we are looking to do now, and the next steps that Mr. Fearborn will be speaking to here shortly, is to take some of those technical specific master plans and find ways to integrate them better into the strategic plan so that we can give those individual plans, one, a little more direction, a little more purpose, but also so that we can dust them off and ensure that they aren't becoming shelf art, but that they truly speak to what our residents have given us in terms of feedback, that we as staff are able to use those effectively on a day-to-day basis, and also to ensure that while some of these plans may not have been updated here recently, we also want to ensure that as we update these plans, they're not in direct conflict with one another, but also not in direct conflict with the strategic plan itself. And so our goal tonight, as we really kick off this officially, is to use these 4 pillars as kind of the 4 main chapters or the 4 main volumes of the overall comprehensive master plan that the city will follow going forward. And then within it will include the individual chapters of where these more technical, hands-on specific plans will live that we can use as we go forward. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Fearborn.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I would ask Mr. Carteret to go ahead and pass out to the council. This is, you'll remember we brought the draft strategic plan to you all a couple of months ago for you to begin reviewing. That draft strategic plan is in here, and I'm going to specifically ask you, and this will be the format Basically, when we complete this process in 2021, this strategic plan will be sitting here, and it will be supported with volumes, literally, of the plans that you see up here on the screen. If we can start with, if you go to the very, very back of the strategic plan book, you will see the Gantt chart, which is our plan moving forward in 2021. It is extremely aggressive. A lot of work to be done. I'm sure that surprises you all. So as you're kind of glancing at that, when core team met and subsequently we met with the management team, I was asking the question of everyone, why a comprehensive plan? Kind of started with Mr. Carteret has long advocated that the growth management plan does not adequately describe what is done with that particular plan. Most other municipalities do not use that term. They either use the term land use plan, which you'll see up here on the screen, or they use the term comprehensive plan. That led to a discussion at the management team level of, if the growth management plan name alone were to change to a comprehensive plan, is that plan actually comprehensive for the city? It's not. A comprehensive plan needs to include all of these plans because they all impact one another. Shortcomings from the past as we've looked at our planning process. One plan not talking to another plan. Can't tell you the number of times before something comes to you all, we have seen, even up to the growth management plan, being in conflict with the transportation plan or the water management plan. Happens all the time. The only way to correct that is to not be doing plan two ways. One, don't plan in isolation. We have to plan across staff levels and in some cases across committee levels. Second item is the way that we are determining when we need to review a plan. We have been, I feel, at fault that plan review or making up a new plan has been heavily reliant on time and time alone. We get a new director in and it's time for a new plan. It's been X number of years since we reviewed the plan. It's time for a new plan. We need to rely on our growth and our need and look at our plans from that standpoint rather than time, because time leads to the plans being shelf art. They're done. We check a box. We don't use them interactively. We don't reference them as we're bringing things to the boards, commissions, and ultimately the council. And so we feel like we've accomplished something because we can say we've done a plan, and that's not enough. We need to be, because that does lead to those conflicts of communication that are in there. The second item that contributes to, and I heavily believe this, and with our management team, we have total buy-in from the management team on this. The fault of our plans is that we hire a consultant from the outside to do our plans, and they come in and it becomes a one-size-fits-all. We get the exact same plan that Dayton, Ohio gets with reinsert name of city here, when we have the experts at the management team level. Our management team knows this city better than any consultant could, and any one of our management team, I believe, could leave the management team at any given time and be hired on by some of these consultant groups. The only spot where we will need help is when it is significantly drilling down to engineering numbers, where we actually have to have a mathematical engineer who is in those spots, and even then, those plans right now we're calling for a review of, not a complete rewrite of, so we would be limiting the scope of a consultant who is coming in and helping with us with those. Would we be utilizing perhaps in some cases a consultant to take a very quick look, couple hours, take a look at the plan that we've devised and give us any feedback or input that you can. Sure, that's a real possibility, but it would be limited in scope. We would be completely changing the focus of how we approach these plans going forward. But I think the way we have done it in the past is at fault and does not do justice to what we can be doing ourselves better. The other issue in the past is that there was no high-level review of the needed plans until we started this process. We had plans, we had practices, both formal and informal, and we had policies that were in place, but we hadn't formulated them around a plan. Staff's goal would be to support the City Council's strategic plan with these plans. We have the 4 pillars. We have the goals and strategies that the council has formulated and that we will be taking to the public. And we have the plans that support the goals and strategies, so a pyramid, if you will. The foundation of the pyramid is the plans themselves that we will be relying on and interacting with that help us achieve the goals and strategies that apply to each of the 4 pillars that the council has established within this particular program and that have been in place since we first began this. We didn't change any of those. So what's been done up to now is staff has done a significant amount of comprehensive review of the plans that are in place, the policies that are in place, the practices that are in place, and we would propose, according to these 4 pillars, and what you see on the left-hand side of the Gantt chart, that all of that be formalized into 21 separate plans, a lot of which are in place, a lot of which need to be brought up from practice level to plan level, so we have those, and that all of those plans over the course of time that you see on here, that the various department heads, the various commissions, the various boards interact with one another as we're either reviewing or rewriting or writing from scratch those plans so that we don't have any conflicts and we have better input into what the planning process should actually be. And so you can see those 21 plans both up on the screen and within the Gantt chart here. Any questions so far before I actually get into the calendar of events and everything that's associated with it? Perfect. So you can see the different areas. If we just took one, community identity and connections, you can see within there the different time frames for the plans. The goal would be to complete the first draft of all the plans by the end of June. We have Ms. Jardou, who is, for lack of a better term, so the council could kind of understand it, when we were going through both the charter and the code, we had Jeannie Warner, who was kind of the person who was cracking the whip on everybody for it. Ms. Jardou will be assuming that particular role for this. Keep her in your thoughts for the next several months, and she has already met with all of the department heads to make sure that these are realistic time frames. Obviously, we live under the shadow of COVID. That may lead to some starts and stops, but we can certainly be making adjustments on here as it goes. But you can see the overall plan of addressing each of the plans on here. I would draw your attention specifically to immediately above in section number 1, the last item, which is resident comment. We are proposing 3 community conversations associated with this process and the strategic plan process. Our first one of those community conversations would be in February, after we have already begun the planning process. The goal of that one would be, we have now presented to all the boards and commissions the strategic plan itself that's in here, in draft form. The first meeting would be to go over with the community themselves what we're going over with you all tonight, present them with the draft strategic plan, and ask them to be reviewing that for feedback during the period leading up to July. There you see the second community conversation. In the second community conversation, we will have received community feedback for that entire period of time, and we will be addressing the community feedback on the strategic plan, and then getting any feedback that they would have, but we would be able to show them. Now here are in February we showed you the draft strategic plan. Now we're showing you this huge comprehensive, put it on our website. Here is the draft comprehensive plan associated with that and all the sub-plans. It would be totally transparent. They would be able to see every single plan that we are using at that point in time before it is finalized. We would then have, in November, the complete wrap-up. Here is what the council would like. We've now received your feedback on all of this. Then in November of 2021, one last community conversation to hear from them directly. And then in December of 2021, the council would adopt both the final strategic plan and the final comprehensive plan associated with this entire process. So it is a one-year process, aggressive schedule, but I think we can keep to it if we keep it at the forefront of our planning efforts, if you will. One of the items that we also have to be mindful of is several of these plans, and I'll use the land use plan as an example within all of this. So once staff completes and we have the interaction on the land use plan for development services, it's still that individual plan has to, and by statute, has to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission before it comes to you all for adoption. No component of this leaves out the boards and commissions, and that's what Mr. Eakey and I will be emphasizing to them when we meet with them individually, which we would have liked to have been able to do this evening. They still have total autonomy, and some of it's called for in statute, over their individual plans. Again, the process remains the same. There's input, there's interaction between the different departments on it, but what ultimately gets approved has to be approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Same thing goes for the Park Board. When the Park Board gets the Trails Master Plan and they get the Parks Master Plan, ultimately it will be their responsibility and their privilege to approve those before they're actually inserted in the comprehensive plan for the entire council's review. Any questions on those? Sir.
I have a quick question. Appreciate the detailed explanation. It's well organized and documented. Just had a quick question. At what point, and you spoke to it earlier, we have a very capable staff who's going to drill down to this very detail to put this together. But at what point through this cycle does the council see any drafts?
The council immediately sees the drafts in June. As soon as they are completed, the council sees them. The council will have the opportunity to review them before the community conversation when we actually present the plan and the strategic plan to the entire community.
In the July version? Okay, excellent. Thank you. I didn't see it annotated on the Gantt chart. That's what I was just asking if we had opportunity. Thank you.
We'll be sure that that gets on there.
Thank you.
Sir.
Thank you, sir. I would concur with Councilmember Townsend's comments. My question would be, I would assume, given the structure of how you've laid this out, you've got 21 individual plans that build into the overall project, correct? Do we use blanket language that reminds everybody this is a plan? Because this is the document we want to follow based on what we and the citizens have put forth. But as you know, certainly as Mr. Carteret knows, plans don't always go to plan. Sometimes things change in there. I'm just curious if there's language that would apply to anyone saying, hey, this is just a plan and then this is our procedure if there is a conflict, and what guidance we head towards to determine what takes precedence.
Two-part answer. The distinguishing factor of the plans this time is staff is developing and pretty close to finishing an actual like template for every single one of the plans. So when you, obviously there are subtle differences in them, but if it is truly a plan and it's truly an action plan, every single one of those, no matter how small or how big, should look alike. You should be able to determine, yep, when I go to the parks plan, I know how to reference this exact same section in the transportation plan because they're all like. Part one. Part two, staff has no illusions that because we're taking a practice and it is important enough to make it a plan, that there still aren't going to need to be policies and procedures associated with that plan that back those up. We have learned that from far too many insurance engagements where they say, do you have the plan? Do you have the policies to back up the plan? And has everybody signed off on those policies? And we do that pretty darn well in the police department, but there are other places where it kind of jumps up and grabs us that we don't. So yes, both of those will be in place, sir. Any other questions so far? Any concerns with the Gantt chart as you're seeing it? Sir, we're going to add your component of it, the council contact points on here.
Thank you, sir. Will the council, and this is a 4 or 5 month process for some of these plans, will the council get an update on the progress of maybe some of these more extensive plans or any of these before the June deadline?
Any plan that is another two-parter. Any plan that we're going to be bringing a consultant in, we're going to be informing the council of, no matter how small. Even if the consultant says, I'm going to be reviewing this thing and it's going to be a $500 quick look, the council's going to know that we're calling a consultant in and why. Second item is, and I was actually going to wrap up with this, it would be my intention that a progress report be given to the council during staff reports at the second meeting of every single month, just like it's a regular staff report.
All right. Thank you.
Yes, sir. That's it on that item, sir, but we do have what you and I have been speaking about for other. Hang on just a second. Mr. Carteret, Ms. Sardou, anything to add? Anything I missed? Why don't you go ahead?
So possibly a bridge into our next topic, but recognizing that the realities of COVID mean we may not be able to have the 300-person community conversation like we had in the past. With the 3 that we have on the calendar, we are already in talks with folks at the KU Public Management Center to explore different ways that we can do a hybrid event, a fully online event that would still have the same spirit and feel of the collaborative, feedback that we would get from previous community conversations, but would be completely digital. And so we are already looking at some of those. So as those come forward, you may see those look a little different, but we are fully intending to invite and have just as many folks participate.
There was a huge debate between doing that and renting Arrowhead, and that seemed to be the more practical manner for. But we do have to face those realities.
If we did it as more of a virtual event, would that potentially allow people to be a part of the conversation who might not be able to do it at the scheduled time? I know with lots of the nonprofit virtual events, it they encourage people to join at the right time and hear it live and participate live, but one of the benefits is people can also watch it later and maybe have a longer amount of time to watch it and still be able to participate.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the possible programming kind of benefits is that we would be able to record the whole thing and have folks still participate with an online survey or online feedback. And additionally, we are timing the upcoming ETC survey to also be distributed publicly roughly about the same time that we would have this online or possibly in-person community conversation, as well as another to follow with everything going on with the plans as they start to wrap up.
We also think that the February timeframe is opportune for us because you'll remember from one of our previous conversations, February is when we'll be gearing up the informational campaign for the city for a possible April use tax, and it will give us the opportunity to either virtually or in person explain that to folks and get their feedback on it. So it would enhance that campaign as well. And as a matter of fact, if I could add on to that, tonight is we're kind of doing that because we plan to use tonight's tape as kind of when we meet with the boards and commissions, it'll give them time to review it ahead of time, and then when we meet with them, kind of that base will already be there, and we can do the deep dive that we intended for them tonight, that you all kind of already have some background on. I promise that's all, sir.
Do we want to talk about the other?
Thank you, sir. The mayor and I have been speaking at length today. Obviously, we were meeting here so that we would have room in a COVID environment. The numbers for the county and for the city of Raymore are not good. We met with the COVID team this morning. If the council does not object, we are going to be moving all of the board and commission meetings as well as the council meetings so that everybody feels a little bit more comfortable, and we can have more public should they come in and they could feel more comfortable. We will be reverting back to having our meetings here. We are going to be going back to a situation where we are limiting access, not to the degree that we did the first time, into City Hall and our public buildings. We will be setting up, one of the nice parts about being here is it frees up council chambers for one-on-one appointments. So we are actually creating that as an appointment room. Series of 3 tables. Mr. Quaddy is working on some customized guards so that we can actually be interacting with somebody across the table. And we have a lot of folks come in with blueprints and things like that where we got to have a lot of discussion back and forth. We don't want to shut that down this time like we shut it down last time. So we actually need the chambers to do that. We will be doing everything by appointment. By the end of this week, all of Encode will be in the cloud. So if we have to send folks home, we will have the ability to have anybody working from home as far as administratively is concerned, anybody in the finance office. The city clerk will be putting out occupational licenses next week. They now have the ability to take those payments and have presented me with a process for doing all of that remotely. As you know, we already have a number of different ways to make remote payments in the finance office, and the council approved throughout this entire process a couple of new ways to do that, which has been really good. People have really been taking advantage of that. So we will be going to appointment only at all of the buildings. Animal control will be by appointment only. Public Works, if somebody needs to go in there, which is pretty rare, would be by appointment only, and Parks Maintenance will be just basically locked up because they never receive anybody in there unless it's just somebody lost and looking for where they need to be. I've had Mr. Mustine sent to me late this afternoon everything that would be lost if we went to any kind of a shutdown of our parks programs. He has good information that these are recreational programs only. Right now it would mean basketball, it would mean futsal, and it would mean I want to say wrestling because my grandson's in wrestling, but I don't think wrestling is through our particular department. But there were 3 items that would be immediate. The obvious largest one would be basketball, and it's even larger this year because every other parks department has shut down their recreational basketball programs. So we have had a huge influx of folks wanting to take advantage of ours. The possibility exists that we would kind of do the dance and put those off until we actually have 2 sessions of basketball. We would push both of them back if necessary, but we have to do something to make our employees feel safe and to make people coming into City Hall feel safe. I mean, when I'm hearing from boards and commissions that they're uncomfortable coming here this evening, we've got to address those. It would be my proposal to the City Council that these measures be put into place until the last day of January. If we can come off of that, all well and good. If everything just plummets down and we can say, okay, we're going to open it back up. But in the meantime, I would hate to give anybody any kind of a false impression beforehand. Tomorrow, the mayor has agreed, and we are going to be having a conversation with Bob Houston concerning a little bit of concern that the county has not put a mask mandate into place. You all probably saw what Kansas City and Jackson County and Wyandotte County put into place today. Wyandotte County and Jackson County are actually a little bit more, everybody was a little bit surprised that they could actually come together on something. They're a little bit more restrictive than what Mayor Lucas put into place for Kansas City, because Mayor Lucas's rule is no more than 10 persons inside of the building for any kind of a gathering. The 2 counties are no more than 10 people inside or outside of a building for any sort of a gathering. It's 8. It's 8. No more than 8 people inside or outside for a gathering. So infinitely more restrictive. Schools, nonprofits, religious, and commercial are exempt from that. So if you've got 50 people in the grocery store, or if you've got a number of people attending church or a nonprofit event, those are exempt. The question tonight is, even though they are exempt, there's another section of the policy for both of those counties that says no more than 50% capacity, and those groups are not exempt from that. So the question tonight that is floating around in Cass and Wyandotte County is, okay, we can have more than 8, but is my classroom at 50% capacity? Because they don't address that within the policy. So once again, a little bit vague. I think the mayor and I would be talking with Bob Houston about a mask order only for this county. No restrictions except for that. Because it's going to be climbing a mountain just to get them to do that, I have a feeling. But if it is my opinion, I think it's the mayor's opinion, the problem is if we don't do it countywide, it's not going to work. And it's going to lead to a lot of skirmishes. I'll just give you one that I gave to his honor. For every person who's out there crying for a mask mandate to be in place, there's probably another one who's saying, don't you dare. We're just not hearing from those folks right now, but we know they're out there. We have some at City Hall. If we were to put a mask mandate in just for Raymore, which it may have to come to that somewhere down the line that we would be recommending that, but if we were to do that, then all of the anti-mask people are going to go, okay, well, I'm just not going to shop at Walmart. I'm going to go down to Harrisonville and shop at their Walmart. And then we're going to have Walmart mad at us because nobody's shopping here, in addition to all of the people who are weighing in because we have restricted their rights. So to avoid war in the county, it would just be better if it was a blanket mandate that everybody had to follow. There is also some question, and Mr. Zur and I are going to be speaking with the mayor shortly about whether or not we have the authority to even do that. Section 192 of statute actually limits the downward authority to do that to the lowest county health organization. We don't have a health organization in the city of Raymore. Mr. Zur, would you like to speak to that?
Happy to do so. Yes, Mr. Fearborn is correct with regard to that. Man, that's really loud. I'm going to slip a little further away. How's that? Mr. Fearborn is correct with regard to the analysis of that under Chapter 192 of the Revised Statutes of Missouri, which controls public health and welfare within the state. You've got three separate statutory provisions which appear to allow for the county level, either the county commission or the county public health department, to make decisions with regard to public health issues that would be in addition to what would be promulgated by the Department of Health and Senior Services by the state of Missouri. So there are those three sections, and I'm happy to provide them: 192.280, 192.290, and 192.300, each of which would seem to imply the county level as opposed to a municipal level, when the municipality does not maintain its own separate county or its own separate health authority. I'm really sorry about the feedback you're getting there.
Any questions on that? And again, Mr. Zur and I are going to be speaking at length with the mayor about this before the call to the county tomorrow on how, and kind of strategizing on it. 192.280 basically says it is the duty of the county health officer to promulgate these rules. It does, again, it does not reach down and say anybody can be more restrictive than that. It kind of ends at the end of that string. 290 is the same way. It basically outlines that all the rules and regulations of Health and Human Services are to be applied, but the lowest health officer, and specifically outlines the county health officer. The county health officer can make rules that are more restrictive, not a municipality.
That is correct, and under the 280 there is a reference with regard to municipally appointed health individuals, but only if it has a municipally appointed health individual, which we do not in this particular city.
And one of the concerns that we've got is that, right now Missouri is ranked 15th in the number of infection cases, and
That's
then
correct.
we're one of only 11 states that has not set into place some type of a mandate with regard to gatherings, mask orders, things of that nature. So that, and we know that there's a meeting tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon. There's a press conference, I think, that the governor is going to make an announcement. We're not sure what that announcement's going to be, if he's even going to, allow local authority to make their own mandates, which they've kind of said all along, in opposition to what you all just read with regard to authority. The other thing that we talked about is moving forward with the county is maybe getting Andrew, our health director, to actually provide us with that cover with regard to his support or their support for any type of order or mandate that we might wish to put in place, that they would provide that kind of support for that. So I'm not sure why the county itself is reluctant to do something like that. I know that we've had several people contact us in the past who are, constitutional rights type folks that don't want us to infringe upon their privilege. There's been a lot more that's come to me of late via email and messaging with regard to some type of an order for masks. And so we're hoping that within the next 24 to 48 hours, we can work out something that'll be palatable for you all to possibly codify.
Of the 15 worst states, I'll call it that, of which Missouri is one, only 2 have not in recent months and weeks put something in place. Some more restricted than others, some only a mask deal, some restricting like Kansas City did, and that is Missouri and Florida. And it's going really well there in Florida right now. So we eventually, I suppose the governor's going to have to look at something to put in place to give everybody a cover. Interestingly, Tennessee, the governor issued an executive order overriding statute like that and giving local authorities without health officials the ability to pass whatever they felt they needed to pass. We'll see what direction that goes, because that made quite a bit of news.
Did you have something, Mr. Townsend?
Real quick, I've heard a lot about, both sides of the argument, requesting a mandate, not having a mandate. But I would hope in the conversation you have and that we're going to be having in the coming days, there will also be discussion about what are the remedies, should there be some escalation of concerns if people want to report, what are the penalties behind it, because I haven't heard that discussion, because I know our staff is already, we already got the contractors kind of look at our staffing levels, so what does that look like when it comes to if a mandate is enforced, should it get approved, at the city level or at the county, however you look at it. How does that look from an enforcement perspective? So the answer tonight, that was just a question as you have your discussions. Could that be a part of it?
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Barber, did you have something?
Yeah, I'm just curious. My office is here in Raymore, and I do all my business, most of my personal business here in Raymore. And I was at Lowe's today, and everybody's wearing a mask. I mean, all the employees are wearing a mask. I didn't see anybody, honestly, that didn't have a mask on. Go to Price Chopper, I see the same thing. I understand that, there's some people that want us or want somebody to put a mandate out, but if we're really honest with ourselves, the people that are wearing masks now are going to wear masks if a mandate comes out, and those that don't won't when the mandate goes out. So I'm just curious, what do we think that's going to do? Is it just to do something, or is it because all the major businesses have a sign that says we require a mask, and every place I go around town, I see people wearing masks. So just curious.
Mr. Veerborn, I haven't been out, so I haven't had an opportunity to see whether that's the case or not.
I have not had the same experience. For the most part, folks are wearing masks, but I had somebody giving me the evil eye without a mask on just because I glanced at them with a mask on, and it was at Lowe's. And I don't believe Lowe's has actually taken down their signage.
Well, I will tell you, all their employees have them on.
They sure do.
Like I said, I was there today, and I don't pay that close attention, but I would say everyone I saw had a mask on.
Where? Mr. Zer.
I don't know what would happen at a commission level or a county level for it. I do know under 192.300, there is the authority for individuals to be identified if they're in violation of the county-issued ordinances, mandates, and orders, to be identified as being guilty of a potential misdemeanor and therefore prosecuted under the county ordinance. It doesn't provide the same under the municipal level.
And that's the other issue to your question, council member, is so we put something in that has not existed. Are we going to actually put something in that is a enforcement measure too? I mean, it would have to be that complete, because the only thing that's called for as far as enforcement is concerned, or a penalty phase, is at the county level. We do not have that.
Yes, sir.
Whatever happens, whatever we decide to do, I would hope that initially it's a countywide thing. And if not, I would hope we were able to coordinate with Belton, because like Councilmember Barber, I see pretty good compliance at Lowe's. I see percentage of compliance at Walmart, which I'm at pretty frequently, pretty good. There are always those stalwarts, and I actually talk to the people that as you go past, they're like, we do require a mask, but we don't force people. And so some of them just barge on through. They're a smaller percentage. But where I see the least compliance, and there is no requirement whatsoever, is the Quick Trip on the Belton side. Depending upon the visit that you're in there, you might have 50% compliance. And that's including employees. Some of them have them on, but don't have them on. And most of us know the boundaries, but a lot of our citizens, even those that have lived here for 20, 30 years, don't know exactly at times when they're in Belton or Raymore. And I think that would probably cause some confusion. So my hope would be that one of those two things would happen, that either the county would pass the ordinance or the mandate if that's done, and therefore no questions, or hopefully a coordinated effort between us and them just to take that out of the mix. At least we know at that point, Belton and Raymore are pretty straightforward. You're supposed to wear a mask here.
Yeah, Tom?
Yeah, I agree. When Councilman Barber, I frequent a lot of the places over and over out here a lot. And I do see that. Most people are acceptance of a mask going into the facility, even though they say you have a mask, but if you go in and you don't, they won't say nothing. But I would say 98% of the people I see, 99, or always have masks on. I mean, you're talking about even restaurants in Belton, they wear them to go in, they take them off when they eat, and they wear them when they come out. But in this area, in Raymore and our city in Belton and all the major businesses, even office masks, they all have masks on, the employees. Everybody I've seen when I go in there and all these frequent these places, everybody just puts a mask on. So I think we're doing well with people accepting the masks right now because of the COVID. I don't know. I know I got a few emails last week from a few people who's saying, hey, in the future we'd like to have the city mandate masks, which sometimes can be a very scary idea. But I know I haven't heard people, but I think sometimes you mandate them, then you're going to hear from the other side who are going to be very upset. But I think right now we're doing a very good job, all the local businesses around, and except for a few like you mentioned about Quick Trip. But most of them you go into, even restaurants, people are wearing the mask, and they have the mask mandate to come in with and take off when you eat. So we're doing very well as North Cass County. So I don't know how much or how far we got to go with that as a city. Kind of scary if the city jumps in, like some people are requested the city to mandate a full mask, and we're going to do that to the city. I think there'd be a lot of negativity coming from a lot of the other people. That's why I'm worried about, because they're doing a good job with it right now, I think, most people.
Well, to Mr. Holman's point, we have talked to Belton. We intend to talk to Harrisonville. Harrisonville put in a mandate for their facilities. And I think maybe even closed a couple of their facilities down. Yeah, the enforcement part is always going to be the toughest part. We understand that, and maybe there's a workaround for a strong advisory. The other way would be to somehow enforce it through the business itself. Even then, we don't want to penalize them because somebody refuses to wear a mask and comes into their facility, even though they have the signs up. So, I mean, it's really difficult. although it's obviously not difficult for Kansas City or Jackson County, but it remains to be seen what their compliance is as well as how do they enforce it. I mean, the enforcement part is the toughest part. We don't have the resources, and we know we don't have the resources. So, yeah, that's the tricky part about it, for sure. Mr. Barber.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to pick a fight with my comments, but I do agree, if we do anything, it needs to be county-wide, but I think it needs to really needs to come from the county health department. And the reason for that is I think that would be more substance than coming from this political body to do that. Another thing is we would be doing ourselves a disservice, the county would be, if we implemented this and then didn't educate our citizens. I mean, I think that's important too. If we educated people, that this helps, and you're not just for yourself, but somebody else. I mean, there needs to be some accountability and some trust. I mean, we have stop signs. We trust people are going to stop, but that stop sign doesn't make them stop. So we can't make everybody wear a mask. There's no way. We just said we can't enforce that. But if we educate people, if there is some data out there, if there is some science out there, get it out there and let's get them, trying to be smarter. And I think that might be a strategy.
Frankly, I think we've been pretty good about putting that information out there. I jump on Mr. Fearborn about it, and he says, well, sir, on this date we did this, on this date we did that, and I'm going back and I look at it, oh, yeah, you're right, we did do that. So I don't know how much more education it's going to take, to be honest with you.
We put out today, because I'd asked Mr. Murdoch last week about is there anything that shows that any studies, simple studies, that show that masks work and how they work and what kind of masks we should be looking at. And darned if last Monday, a week ago, the CDC actually came out with a really good study brief that includes 4 studies, type of mask, and it actually shows the percentage. You may have heard this. They've come full line, and they knew that they had to back it up with the studies from in the beginning of all this. The types of masks that civilians could use short of an N95 don't work. So now they came to the point where they said you are protecting others if you are in a mask. And now they've got studies that show percentages of protecting yourself if you're in a mask, if you are wearing, and they get pretty specific about it, a heavy cloth trifold mask that has the folds within it. And they go into all the different levels that it is. It's like a 4-page brief. It's really good. So we posted that up today. Took a little heat for it. Mostly from people who said it didn't go far enough. That's what we're talking about tonight.
Right.
But it is I encourage the read. It's a really good read.
Mr.
And
Holman?
we link to it. So.
Okay. Mr. Holman?
I think Councilmember Barber has a point, and one thing I would ask us to consider strongly, if there is a mask mandate that comes out, either at the county level or we pass something, we do a very good job of providing the education, but a lot of our education requires the user to access our website. What I think we could do relatively cheaply would be to put together an interpretive signage poster, an 11 by 18, pictures the mask, the information that you just said. You're protecting these people. You're probably protecting yourself. Use the right kind of mask. Here's how to wear it, and we distribute them to every business and public location in town, if that goes into place, and ask them to put those in a prominent place. I know Mr. Ike could design something that would be wonderful.
Mr. Burke?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think we could start by, since we're in a building that says we're supposed to have masks on, we don't lead by example here at all. I really don't. I feel like we haven't for this entire period. It's a situation tomorrow night. The school board is getting ready to have a special meeting looking at it, and with the people that are not encouraging their children to wear masks, we're constantly, I mean, most everybody's doing a great job at the school, but it's the same kids over and over, and I just don't feel like that I know we can't legislate this, but if you don't put up stop signs, no one will stop anywhere. Does that mean if we can't stop people from stopping, should we just take them all down? That's what we've done with masks.
Well,
That-
yeah, Mr. Delgado.
Just to throw it out there, I might guess, I'm quite certain the Cass County Health Department probably has some great signs we could put up. I would hate to see us spending money on that if we could grab them from the health department and save a little.
We will definitely check.
Yeah, it would.
One last possible, highly political, if the county does not do anything, and in spite of our pleading, and the council would like to pause taking any actions for the city in light of everything, would the council perhaps, as an interim measure, be willing to go out on the huge limb of passing a resolution pleading with the county publicly to do something? I mean, the county won't like it, but at least we're on record. Just a thought. No need for any sort of a response tonight, but
Okay.
interesting times.
Yes, it is. Anybody have anything else? Mr. Berenson.
One more quick thought, Mr. Mayor. You mentioned earlier as an alternative, a strongly worded, recommendation. What has the county done so far? Has the county officially asked people to wear a mask? That was my understanding. Is what has happened so far?
I don't know if
In
they
lieu of a mandate, have they done anything?
They actually put something out today,
today, I think.
and basically kind of a pretty please,
Okay.
wear a mask.
Not that it matters for the record. I don't know that I support mandating masks, especially if we think it's a problem in our city. Then I think we should ask our businesses to enforce a mandate, or we should ask our businesses to maybe tighten their restrictions a little bit before we mandate it. Just my thoughts on it. Maybe that's a step we could take in lieu of that.
We have actually turned people away at the window. If they come in and they refuse to wear a mask, they are turned out of City Hall until they put a mask on.
Yeah, and we have the right to do that. It's our facility, absolutely. I agree. That I'm fine with. At this point, I certainly just don't support, as a city, mandating the mask because I don't want to, for my own reasons, I don't know that I agree with that, but I also don't want to be in the enforcement game and having to enforce that as well. Thank you.
Nobody has anything else? We'll stand adjourned.
Thanks, sir.
Stay tuned.
Jim, thanks for dinner.